Ruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem. B'Shem Irgin Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir from Rabbi Yosef Eisen Shlita. I'd like to give a big shikach to Rabbi Moshe Klein, one of the board members of Irgin Shir Torah, for sponsoring tonight's shir. Nishmas Imoy, Oisha Edel, Basar Avrom, Aver Allah Shalom, Yortzeit Aleph, Shrevish Elot, and Ishmosa Tzura B'Tzara Chaim. I have the great list of sponsoring one of the remaining shiurim. We'll have a chelik in our Basas Torah, Irgin Shir Torah, by still joining in the Irgin Shir Torah's dinner, which was Monday night. Call 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. We'll come over to one of the Skanim after this year. Tonight we have the cover to have with us once again, Rabbi Yosef Eisen Shlita, Rav Kollel Bnei Torah, Rav Mashgiach and Manal Kashrus agencies, to discuss new Kashrus findings. It's my cover to call on Rabbi Eisen for tonight's session.
Birshus Rav Hagadol Yedidi Ahuvi Rabbi Eliezer and his Shutif Hanemon, who literally stands by throughout all these Gavaldig Shiyurim, even though we're at the tail end of a summer, but it's so important to be makir, and I'm very aware that what I'm saying is only mixah shvach. I was planning to say a little bit more, Rabbi Eliezer, but being that you're here, midar folgen chazal, and only allowed to be megala mixas, who really puts his leiva nefesh mamish b'mesiris nefesh nifla to be able to be mezakeh klal Yisrael b'chol oifen shehu, and certainly among those areas that Klal Yisrael need constant chizik is in one of the Amudei Hayadus, which is the Omud of Kashrus. So it's with that I personally, on behalf of the Groiset Tzibur, but we'll be listening to be makir, the godless of the toiva that Rabbi Eliezer does for the Gans Klal Yisrael. You should be zoicha together with the mishpacha to see nachas the kedusha, to be taka see the emes haramas karen ha'toira b'chol eifanim. In one of the discussions that I had with Rabbi Bald is that we need a catchphrase. We need a title that strikes interest. That's the part of the marketing vibe in today's door. But being that I did not get back to him in enough time, he chose his own, and he wrote over here, new Kashrus findings. Okay, new Kashrus findings. So I put thought into this. But before I share with you what I believe is an incredible fundamental principle that has such a widespread application in Inyonei Achila, let me just be magder it. Let me frame it kiderach chazal in a pasuk. The Torah Akdosh says like this in the Hagdama before Kashrus, the Parsha of Kashrus in this week's Parsha, Parshas Re'eh. Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem, lo yisiskoidedu v'lo yisimu karcha b'nei nechem l'meis. You're not allowed to harm yourself. You're not allowed to do something which inflicts physical harm to yourself. The Rebbeinu Shalom created a perfect body, and we have no right, even if it's something which we could understand a person inflicting out of absolute misery. A person goes through a tragedy, and that's how he expresses his grief. That the Torah says Lois is going to do. And then the Torah says like this: Bonim atam l'Hashem Elokeichem, ki am kodesh ato l'Hashem Elokecha, u'b'chabochar Hashem liyos lo am segula. Incredible Lashonis. Think about the Lashonis. Bonim atam l'Hashem Elokeichem, ki b'chabochar Yisrael, ki am kodesh ato. The Rebbeinu Shem wants us to be la'am segula. Incredible Lashonis. And all of that is to what? Is to protect our physical bodies. With this in mind, we can understand so well the psukim and the pasha that that follows this pasuk. Because otherwise, this pasuk seems to be so out of place. The Torah just finished with Novi Sheker, Mesis Amadiach, Irani Dachas. What does it have? Makesher. What does it have to do with Bonim Atal Hashem Lekechem and Kashrus? But Bonim Atal Hashem Lekechem is a Hakdama. The Rebbeinu Shalom is telling us, I care about every single guf that I created by a Yid. Kal v'chomer, ben Bnei shel Kal v'chomer. Certainly it's true. If I care so much, and I explained it to you, says, you're my kinder. You're an Am Kodesh. I chose you. You're my schooler. You're my treasure. If that's descriptions regarding a guf that's here today, gone tomorrow, a neshama, let's l'neitzach nitzachim, that lasts for eternity. So kol shekain, we can't do something that the Torah tells us is going to inflict, is going to be metamei nafshenu. An incredible insight into understand what we're going to be speaking about tonight. A guf, with all of its limitations, the Rebbeinu Shalom cares so much to safeguard. What about the neshama that's directly affected, like through direct infusion, and when we're not zohir, when we're not careful what we eat? So tonight's title, let's go to tonight's title. Tonight's title was New Kashrus Findings. So let me tell you what I think is the most astounding Kashrus findings that exist that we might not even realize. You know what, to me, the most spectacular, extraordinary, unusual, all-expansive, relevant, you got the point, Kashrus findings, new Kashrus findings there are, so let me share it with you. You know, did you ever think, right? Did you ever think how many choices today in Tufshin Pei Hey a person has? Which supermarket you want to go buy in? In today's, in the mountains, we just came from the mountains just today. Everything from this year to last year, how many new supermarkets open? From last year to the year before, from 10 years ago to now, they have enough food to supply Biafra and the third world countries, Baruch Hashem. Restaurants, caterers, the amount of travel that we do that provide kosher food, cruises. When was the last time you walked into a liquor store? No, there used to be a couple, one small section of kosher ones today. You could get lost. If somebody in your house is looking for you and you walked into and you want to choose and select, you get lost there for an hour. The amount of meats and shchitis and cuts of meats and snacks and candies and hotels and ice cream stores, they're endless. The choices are pashut endless. We could choose. We don't even, there's so much that's there for us to choose. We don't even know what to choose. Now let me pose a question, not only to the ones that are sitting here, but the ones that will eventually, if they listen, I want you to think and provide a loose estimate. How many eateries and stores and caterers and everything that we described now exist between Borough Park, Flatbush, Queens, Williamsburg, Monroe, Bergenfield, Lakewood, 5 towns that have only 100? How many? 500, 800, 1,000. What does it represent? The number is astounding. And then go and then figure that out when you go and travel to Chicago. Or when you go to the West Coast. Or you go to Florida. You go to Montreal. You go to Toronto. Exponentially, the number is like the Torah says, they stopped counting. Ki ein bo mispar. There's no, the counts are, it's incredible. So what am I driving at? I'm driving out, you know what the new Kashrus findings are? How many people could say that they are familiar with even 10 to 15%, or maybe even 20% of non-standard hashkachas, non-standard. The standard is standard. Everybody knows. O-U, Chaf K, star K. Oh, you know. C-O-R, the big ones, you know. But what about what comprises 30% to 40% of European hashkachas, of items that you don't even know? You pick up snacks, you pick up cookies, you pick up candies, you pick up drinks, you pick up wines, you pick up chicken, meat, vegetables. Where's familiarity? It's pasha. To me, the lack of familiarity. You don't even know. You're talking about new Kashrus findings. New Kashrus findings is how much don't we know? Now, so you're going to say, okay, so who says you have to know everything? So who says you have to eat everything? So today, I want to be able to address through stories about familiarity. Somebody called me on my way up to the mountains on last Wednesday night. They have a chasana in New Jersey this coming Monday night. And he wants to know about hashgacha. This man should be the prototype of a shining role model. He's going to a place. It's a local hashgacha. He doesn't know the caterer, but he knows the venue where it's taking place. And you know what he did? He called. And I asked him, do me a favor, send me a reminder. He sent me a reminder on the spot that I should call. He called me again today to find out. So what does that tell you? That tells you that he cared about familiarity. He just didn't go and eat something that he was unfamiliar with, and depended on, like we said 20 times already, to Rav Belsky's biggest hashgacha, Rav Allah Essendart, and everybody's eating there. So, and not to eat. You think not eating is a kunz? So you say, I'll go to a place, I won't eat, I'll eat before. I'll eat before. Somebody asks you, why are you eating? What do you mean? I'm not really sure who the caterer is. So I'm going to tell you Maisa. I'm going to tell you Maisa, two Maisa. Again, that underscores the importance of thinking, of familiarity, and how sometimes taking what you think is a position that's a very admirable position is not so admirable. Rabbi Yaakov was sitting at a table at a Falestacha event, but people didn't know the pratim. There were Gedolei Yisrael that was sitting there. There were Rabbonim, Rosh Yeshivas, and the waiter came over to every one of those Gedolim and asked them, what can I get the Rav? What can I get the Rosh Yeshiva? Fish, 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 fish. They went to Rabbi Yaakov and they'll say, flesh. So somebody obviously was very friendly with Rabbi Yaakov and turns to him and he said, why did the Rosh Yeshiva order flesh? He says, "Es ist veranen a choishin mishpatoichet." And then he explained what he meant. He says, an Erlich caterer. Did he know him well? No, but he knew something about that. Rav Yaakov went to go ahead and he made sure to be familiar with what he was eating. And he said, if I don't eat the flesh, they're going to say Epis is failed by the caterer. He says, "Es is faran and achoishin mishpit." How did I know this Maisa? I know this Maisa is because I did the same thing as the others did. And I went to an affair, I was sitting at a table, and I made the decision not to eat. And somebody next to me asked me, I said, I'm really not sure about the caterer. And it happens that when I made that statement, guess who walked by? The caterer. The caterer walked by. And he was so offended. He was so hurt. He said, this type of behavior ruins my business. He said, if you didn't know, why didn't you ask? Why didn't you ask? You rather opted on doing something which could cause me a loss that people won't eat by my catering event anymore because of you. It was the most on the mark comment that somebody ever made for the sake of being machmer, of going ahead and doing what seemingly is the right thing to do. Familiarity. If you can't eat, you can't eat. And there's no cheshbon of the person's feeling if he'll be insulted or not. Do better, get a better hashkacha, be more erlich. But that's only if you're familiar. That's only if you took the time to become aware. And then he told me the Ma'aser Rabbi Yaakov. This caterer told me the Ma'aser Rabbi Yaakov. So not only did he point out to me what the lack of familiarity does, of what the cheshbin and the way that Gedolei Yisrael look at things. An incredible insight from Rabbi Yaakov, an incredible insight. Familiarity is something which is very not common. People, and I'm not talking, as I said, I'm not referring to the things which are the Yeduim. I'm talking the hundreds and thousands of things that are available that are any Yeduim, that people don't know. I was standing here last year and I told you a Maisa Pella that happened to me in Europe. And that was after I did my research. And Afal Pikain, in Europe, people don't know how much they have to really look and search and really become familiar. I got a call this past Sunday night. You have to hear this call. Again, emphasizing the yesod of familiarity. Person is taking a cruise. He calls me up. I said, wow. I said, he's calling me up to find out about the Kashrus of the cruise. Great. That's what, taking a cruise. It's an expensive cruise, so you find out. So this is what he tells us. He says, he said, I want to tell you, I said, I have something very important to ask you. What is that? What very important to ask me? He heard that this cruise is a type of a ship. It's a type of a vessel that when I open my window, or I open up my door, or I open up my vent, what the cabin pressure affects the room next to me, and it raises the I told him, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're referring to. I said, ask somebody that's familiar with that. I have no idea, but what's my point, Rabbi? I said, what's my point? My point is that this guy was busy, and very commendable. Very commendable. He was busy. He didn't want to have any type of an abizrayu or a srach of a problem with Hilchos Shabbos. Wonderful. But it could cost him in a sefer. What about I was waiting for him to ask me about the Kashrus. Cruises. You talk about familiarity with cruises. Somebody called me up last year and asked me, the wife, she said, my husband went ahead and surprised me. He bought us tickets in a cruise. She said, what should I do? She said, it's a real Isha Chashuva, real, very, very, very upgeheaten lady. So now already I'm in a tough spot, because now I'm wearing two hats. Because not only am I wearing a hat of telling her my feelings about a cruise, which I'll share with you all in a moment. Again, familiarity. It was now domestic issue. Because the husband surprised his wife, a surprise of a lifetime, and he bought themselves tickets to a luxury cruise. Ein mol in a lifetime. And I just said to her, but I called the husband to make sure that he knew that I sort of packaged it in a way where she didn't necessarily call me. I was speaking to her and she told me, and I mentioned on my own. I wanted to do it in a way where it wouldn't create an imbalance in the shalom bayis. And I told them certain things, that cruises have multiple kitchens, and even if your caterer has one kitchen, it doesn't mean that the waiters are not going around from other kitchens, and everything is la Yehudim, and I'm not really sure if they lock the kitchens. I don't know if the kitchens, even that are designated to the kosher tour, are really controlled. What did we just finish learning in the Daf HaYomi? Nun Zayin, Nun Ches, Nun Tes, Nun Samach. What did we just finish now? Mafteach v'choisim. That's Pesuach to the Rishus. What did we just finish those sugyas? We mamish just finished those sugyas in Avodah Zarah. So over here you have a kitchen that has kalim, kosher kalim, and that kitchen is worse. It's not only pesuach, it's pesuach to all the other kitchens. There's no lock, there's no afteach, there's no anything on it. It's the middle of the night. They're afraid in the middle of the night people are strolling the ship. So over here, the bottom line is, after the cruise, they told me they will never go on a cruise again in their life. They said it was crazy. He said that literally, we saw that all the kitchens were open next to each other, and the waiters, she said that after a day, she said I got indigestion for the rest of the 5 days. I couldn't eat. Familiarity. You're going somewhere, ask. You're going somewhere, ask. And that is really what's the new Kashrus findings. The new Kashrus findings are people are not familiar. And we're talking about, I just painted a picture of how much is available out there. Lo Yu'umin Ki Yisupra, added all the communities, add all the venues, add all the products. How many kosher products are there on the market that don't have the standard, that have, it could be 20, 30%. Out of what? Out of hundreds of thousands. Well over 100,000. That's a number, Rabbi said. Whatever you look, however you come to determine, that's a number. 20%, 30% of over 100,000 is a number. And where is the people know their standards? Someone told me they're going out to a vacation. One of the favarfana erter that you thank Chabad that they have minyanim there, or else there wouldn't be any minyanim. One of these places throughout the United States. So they're going out there. People go on vacation. And they asked me, I'm going here, is it reliable? I said, that's a very wide blanket question, reliable. What are your standards? What do you usually have at home? Like, what shchitas do you use at home? What shchitas don't you use at home? Are you only makbid on only is everything? Are you makbid on pas Yisrael, not pas Yisrael? No, not that. I wasn't selling her any standards. I was just asking her about her standards. You know what she said? She says, I'm embarrassed. I don't know. She says, I don't know. She says, I don't know. I know that we shop here, we shop that. I don't know what we buy, what we don't buy. I said, what you should do is that a little bit of homework. If you want to know what the status is eating somewhere else, the first thing is your standards. Know your own standards. What do you makbid on? What do you look to be mahader on? What do you look to take into your own home? What are your... I'll give you... Today, I had a maisa, my own wife, called me. She went to a store in the mountains, and she's picking up some salads. Now today, we talk about standards. This week's parsha, and it's spelled out in Parsha Kedoshim very clearly about the standards of Kashrus, about the psukim, on how we have to be makbid. And all of a sudden, she asked me, which of these two salads should I buy? And it's achshadari because now there are many companies of erel chashkoches, but it happens to be that as the companies see that they do well in business, so more say, one second, it's a good business opportunity, let me open up my own new salad and get hashkocha and shalom al Yisrael. So before I answer you, before I share with you what I told her, I want to share with you another nakuda. Familiarity, standards. What are your standards? What are your standards on Bishul Yisrael, on Pas Yisrael, on Chol Yisrael? You buy anything, as long as it says that, from any hashgacha, in Europe, Eretz Yisrael, anywhere, like it just has to have Hebrew lettering. It's something to think about. What are your standards? As every single year, just go to the supermarket. In where I go, give a shout out for White House Estates in Hurleyville. There's a small concession, and every single year, as little as the concession is, those shelves get more packed and packed. Because one of the great things there are when people come and bring little kids, they tell them to the biggest pleasures, go to the concession, put it on a bill. He says it has to be over a certain age because parents don't know about it. Anyway, every single year they have new things. This year we saw a candy with a flashlight. Like, I don't know exactly what maybe is the parents examine the cavities after you eat the candy. So maybe that's a very good combination of this gooey, sticky type of candy with a flashlight at the end. Well, my point is that, and who's hashgacha? It could be European hashgacha, and I'm sure the hashgacha is good. Then again, if it's not a person that's a Yoreh V'Sholem, like we have running our concession, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. So here you have a complete and total explosion of so many things. And what do we know? We don't know even sometimes our basic standards. But before we continue and talk about standards and what those standards should include and what you should be looking at, let's talk about another Nakuda. And this to me is the biggest chiddush, the biggest new findings in Kashrus. And this is the question: do we have ambitions to do better? A very fair question. I think as Erel Chayidin, as we grow older, we always have ambitions. As the days of Elul are literally on our footstep, on a doorstep, Rosh Chodesh, Sunday night, Elul is man of contemplation, of thinking. What's the first and foremost thought of a person that's a serious Oved Hashem? As the year ends, am I thinking of maybe doing a little bit better, maybe a little bit better in my learning, a little bit better in my serious haloshin, maybe a little bit better in my davening, maybe a little bit better in my chesed? Something you're going to come to the Eibush that was saying it. You know, anyone successful has ambitions. One of my children told me today that he knows somebody that is working in, now there's a very big field called ABA. It's an educational field providing services. And somebody told me, oh, his friend, now he was hired for marketing, and he went over to the owner of the companies and said, you know what, could you give me the opportunity to get involved in operations? And I said, Moshe, why did the guy do that? He said, because marketing only has limited growth, and if you get involved in operations and overseeing, which means billing and just making sure that everybody is doing their job and reaching out, and whatever operations include, operations provide more of an opportunity. So I said, that's real. I said, that's great. I said, and obviously the guy can't ask for more money because he's asking for more responsibility. He can say, okay, I'm more responsible, have more money. That doesn't go down there. But a guy goes ahead and says and projects himself as being ambitious. So obviously, and he does well and he succeeds. So you recognize the fellow's motivation and ambition and enthusiasm about his job, and he grows from that way. It's a double portion. That's like in every industry. Whether you grow in the medical industry, in the legal industry, in the finance industry, whatever it is, in the chinuch industry, whatever it is, you start off as one thing and then you get put up as the system manal. It's all about living with a vision of ambition. And to me, Rabbi say this is the biggest finding in the Kashrus. How much ambition do we have in making sure that what defines us as Bonim Atem and Am Segula and B'chol B'char Yisrael, how much ambition do we have? Whether it has to do with the shchitas that we eat, whether it has to do with the inyanim produce that we eat, or general foods and snacks and beverages, or the hotels that we go to, or the catering events that we attend. How much ambition do we have? And how much do we talk about it? How much do we project it? This is what I'm talking about. And that's the whole connection of knowing, of familiarity, standards, because all those things emerge as a result that I want to know. I want to find out. I want to be assured. I want to make sure that the most direct thing that we do, the most direct item that we engage in, which is the consumption of food. As the Gemara says on Lamed Tes and Yuma, V'nit meisim bam, al tikri nit meisim al nitamtem. And the Gemara then makes a kal v'chomer. If that's by The negative, what about the positive? Adam mekadesh atzmoi milmata ma'at mekachin oisei harbin milmala. Ma'at. It's not equal. A little bit of effort yields a lot of siyata d'shmaya. This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there's so much out there. There's so much that we could do and find out. I could tell you one thing. Back to what I began with. The explosion of the kosher market, of the Erlich kosher market, of the kosher market that we patronize. I can tell you that one thing, the operators are very ambitious. Think about this. They are so ambitious, they are so driven, they are so passionate that they find it. Okay, we have an opportunity, another supermarket, another traveling venue, another catering, another takeout, another this, another that. Why am I saying something which is emes lamita efsher lahakrish? Because go look and see from Yediyah how many more stores there are. If people wouldn't be ambitious about earning money and making money, you would have a depletion and a decrease of very significant numbers. Yes, some of them fail. I'm very sorry. Hashem Yishmerenu. But there's so much, your head spins. Because everybody feels that they could do better. So how do you do better? How does one express their ambition? How does one begin familiarity? How does one create standards? Somebody just asked me a complicated shaila with Yoredeya, Hilchos Basa V'Cholov. They have somebody go, yeah, ask a shaila. What about if a person has a very tough tax issue? Who are they going to for guidance? Some guy that just finished college? Or a guy's in business for 20 years that's known as a tax guru? Who are you going to get medical advice from? Somebody loyaleno has to do a procedure. He's going to some hospital somewhere in Bed-Stuy, or he's going to HSS in the city. Where's he going? Where in the world is he going to? Where is a guy that needs legal advice going to? To a guy, to an Italian small office somewhere with one man working, and he's a secretary, are you going to a real law firm when you have an issue? So who are you going to address the most fundamental issue in a yid's life? And that's what they eat. You go and you find a Rav. And if the Rav doesn't know, the Rav could find out. And he is the one, he should be the director. And you sit down with him, you say, Rav, you know what, I was thinking about it. I need guidance. I need guidance in things which we take for granted, but there's so much out there, my head is spinning. Every single time I think, the market is limited, it keeps on expanding and growing and mushrooming weiter and weiter. Hayreinina, show me the derech. I want to succeed. Show me how to grow my family in these inyanim. And there are answers. Because if a person is aware, you know what? In the beginning of the summer, there was a terrible, terrible infestation in one of the companies making vegetables, pre-washed vegetables. And there was a very big response among the Kashrus agencies. Now, this one particular thing could have had the problem because the Rav Machshir, although he's an expert, isn't necessarily not known as an expert in Toiloyim. In other things he is, but not in Toiloyim, because it's a very specific, it's a specialty. Remember, you're not going to a foot doctor when a person who has a cardiac issue. You're not. Nor are you going to a cardiac expert when you have a vascular issue. You're going to a vascular person, you're going to a cardiologist. So not every single person is a baki in all in Yonim, especially when it has to do with things which are very daka min adaka, because that's what Teilayim, Hilchas Teilayim are, daka min adaka. And there's a world of Kashrus, which is easily accessible if you go to your Rav, who could call, and then you get the information. He knows who to call. I got a call tonight from a Choshev Rav in Flatbush, who literally, I was eating, and it was after a long ride. I was in the car between all my driving today with 4.5 hours, and I sat down and I was eating, and he called me. I said, let me finish eating. And then I said, no, I'm not going to finish eating. Let me answer him, because Mustami, he wants to eat. Adam Choshev Mamish one of Chashuvei Rabbanim. He doesn't go anywhere without. He calls me. He says, Yosef, I'm here. What do you think? He constantly ambitious, familiarity, asking about standards. You could rest assured that his kahila, who was a very kosher v'kil in Flatbush, hears it from their Rav that talks about this. Because he's always asking. And I answered him. So my wife calls me about these salads, and I said, could you tell me, I have two in front of me, tell me the hashkachas of both of them. She says, one hashkacha, the second. I said, do the first. Why? Because the second one was a salad. Now, I'm sure he fixed the problem, but the problem was so extreme that I became a little bit weary. What's my point? I'm not saying to say that it's not good, but the other ones didn't have that issue or problem. The only way that you know about this is if you're v'sha'alta, v'dorashta, heitev. What does the Torah say? This we learn out of the Sheva Bedikas v'chakiris from this week's parsha. We have Xavier Shava, we have this Rashi HaKodesh tells us that we have by Mesis Amediach, we learn Xavier Shava about that, right? We do. You know what? The Torah is teaching us a lesson. Just don't make a decision. V'sha'alta v'chakarta v'dorashta heitiv himein emes. This is what happened. You learn. From the Etzem Parsha of Kashrus, there's halachis. The halachis of Shlita, and in the Shlita, there are halachis Moshe Sinai, about the details of Shlita, about how much you have to shecht, about what a sakin has to look like. All of these things, we are a nation of details. We are a nation of diktukim and halacha. What are the new kashrus findings? They ought to be to go back to the basics, to just be koina yediyas. And you know what happens after a while? You ask a shayla, then you ask a second shayla, third shayla, fourth shayla. 3 months go by, a half a year goes by, 9 months go by, a year goes by. You'll be astounded of how much, when you're focused on processing the information, how much now you became familiar through the questions that you have asked. A dover pella, that's what it is. So getting back, you want to be ambitious, to me, which is the biggest, then you need to find a very practical mahalach. You ask a Rav Shailas in Basa V'cholav, in Yeridea, in Hilchas Ribbis, in Hilchas Tefillah. Why aren't we asking your same Rav? Why aren't you asking him Shailas of things which might be much more basic than even that? This is the new finding. The new finding is we need to find this. But I want to, as we're coming to a conclusion of this class, I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about, we spoke about three things tonight. And if we put them into a geder, and if we define them, and we identify them, the memela, then we're walking out with something. We spoke about the concept of familiarity. Familiarity with what you're eating, where you're eating, the hashgacha that you're eating from. Familiarity. Basic ideas in being kinda the most basic of basic. We just spoke about the concept of steiging, of advancing, of wanting more, of being more scrupulous, of being more focused on doing as best as we can. Ambition. Ambition in ruchnias. Ambition just like our entire communities have such successful people. Where does their success, the success is all crowned by the Eibishter's ratzon for them to be successful. But there's an inner drive and passion and enthusiasm and motivation and yes, ambition. They have ambition to do well, to succeed, to expand, to be marbe. Why isn't there also such ambition when it comes to the most basic thing that we do more than anything, and that's eat? The only thing that we do more than eat is two things. Even sleep must probably, if you count the amount of time, especially Shabbosim, is probably eat more than we sleep. Unless you do bagels, right? I don't mean eating bagels. 12 hours sleep marathon. But also, the only thing that we do more is breathe, because we breathe when we're sleeping. Other than that, eating, hands down. Hands down. But I want to conclude with something which is so negay to us, and that's we speak about standards. Speaking about standards. Your own standards, like I said to you, with the woman, that simply, was asked, what are your standards? And she said, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I don't know. So now, establishing your own standards. But what about establishing standards when you are now in a position to have other people eat from the food that you're serving them? I'm not talking about in your house. How about out your house? How about you make a kiddush for a yard site? How about if you make an offer? How about if you make a bar mitzvah? How about if you're invited to a shevrach? How about if you invite any type of a suda? You're making a suda's haidah. You're making a sima shas. Wow, what an accomplishment. And you're inviting 100 people, and you're hiring a caterer. Don't you bear some achrayas? Standards? Maybe your own standards. Maybe your own standards are not as high, but there's a rabbim now that are eating from your hands. What about that musik? And that's why I want to tell you. There is an organization, umbrella organization called ACO, Associated Kosher Associated Kosher Organizers, right? ACO. And they have an umbrella of hundreds of hashgachas, hundreds. Now, they have initiated something incredible. In order to be able to shtelevek standards that could work for the ruba of our community, they have a system where they go into camps. Right now, camps ended, or they're ending the next couple of days. They review the kitchens. Right now, there's a major push for shuls throughout the entire country to be able, that in your own kitchens, in your own shuls, that, not talking about a shul that has a 2x2 kitchen, but a shul that has a warmer and an oven and to have some type of oversight standards. And they're working with the Rabbanim. We speak about Rabbanim. Where the Rabbanim are the ones that make the choice of what standards they feel comfortable for their own tzibur. But the point is that what you as an individual making the, so to speak, the party, the event, what achrayus are you bearing? You bear big achrayus. I want to tell you, years ago, more than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I was asked to come to my own yeshiva, Yeshiva Torah Das, at the request of the administration, and they asked me, could you go through the kitchen? Now, you understand that in the yeshivas, moistis, they are the paltin shel melech. It's there that misham teitzei Torah l'Yisrael. So sometimes, and this was more than 15 years ago, and there was a stark revelation that without even realizing who's in control of the kitchen, there's a frum cook, right? But the frum cook stays till 10 o'clock to clean the kitchen, right? He stays till 10 o'clock to clean the kitchen when he is in the yeshiva, and the crack of dawn at 5 in the morning. And I'm not talking about one yeshiva, I'm talking about across the board, Litvish Meisters, Hasidish Meisters. Who runs the kitchen? Who's the balabatim? Who's the balabatim? What do they have? They have total and complete control until it was changed. One yeshiva after the other yeshiva 15 years ago, because they were nisayir, went ahead and made literally mapeches. Mapeches. The big yeshivas in the Flatbush all did a concurrent mapecha. The Mir, Chaim Berlin, Torah Vodaas, the three big Litvish yeshivas, they all have cheshbonis on what and it was a double poshet. I spoke to him, I said, is it you talking that the paltin shel melech, that's how I termed it. Is it you talking that the paltin shel melech should not have the greatest pikuach? But you know what? If you don't feel that standards, but then they chop, they're right. How could a kitchen, the keys are not, they had to do the very painful thing. The most difficult thing is to take a Getraya goy that's been in a yeshiva in a moisid for decades. You trust him with everything because he is time-honored, proven his dedication and devotion. And you say, sorry, I need the keys. The keys, Rabbi, the keys, everything I'm going to do in the kitchen. I need the keys. I need the keys. You can't have the keys. That is the most difficult thing to do. But now, we just finished the sugyas. Oh, wow. The mamish dova be'itay matoiv. Mafteches bi'arakum. Mafteches bi'arakum. What did Chazal say about that? Just a chumrah balma. It's a contrived chumrah of the Kashrus agencies. Look in the Gemaras, look in the sugyas. Look in the sugyas, look in the Rishonim. There's so much discussion, like Torah is endless. There's so much discussion about everything. Mamish, big discussions. When I was learning, I was looking at some of the Rishonim, Mamish, and Mamish, and Rashi does a sikum at the end of Daf Samach. Rashi does a big sikum of the sugyas about the goyim having mafteches, not having mafteches, a shomer that sits there, not sitting there. These are all. This is what we're talking about. So I want to summarize. I want to summarize tonight. The stories are there. Stories are there. It's up to us. We could have more familiarity, whether it's in anything. You go and buy wine. You like wine for Shabbos. You have to make a choice of wine. So if something has a standard hashgacha, so then there's no question. But what about as I said before, the 20, 30% of wine that doesn't? Or rather the wine that's coming from Europe that you're not, familiarity. Are you familiar with hashgachas? This is the new Kashrus findings. New Kashrus findings is the lack of familiarity, the lack of even knowing your own standards. And yes, the Iker is the ambition chelik, and that your Rav could help you. No different than your Rav doesn't only deal with halacha l'maisa, he deals with giving practical adracha, giving you, because many of these things you want to do better, sometimes you need adracha on how to navigate it, how to balance it. This is what we're saying. As the time is marching on, as everything becomes so much more available, as the choices become so much out there that they could spin your head, you don't know where to go, where to look, where to go, you get lost. Back to basics, to say, am I grabbing something off the shelf? Am I attending a simcha? Am I going on a vacation? Am I going into a hotel? Without being familiar with the many different standards. Let me conclude, and if there's any questions, we'll take questions. At the end, the Rambam writes, after 17 prokim, in Hilchas Macholes Asuris, the Rambam covers all inyonim of Macholes Asuris that are covered in the whole Yeridea. The Rambam says, V'chol hanizer b'dvarim elu, mevi kedusha yiseiru l'nafshay. The Rambam, we know, does not employ poetics. The Rambam, everything is steeped and based on halacha and mitzias. Mevi kedusha yiseiru la'atz u'memarek nafshay la'Hashem. Such an interesting, memarek nafshay. What does that mean? Yes, you know what it means? That sometimes you have to abstain. Sometimes the answer is mekenish esnalts. You can't. When you are confronted with that, when you abstain, when you employ the tinus haravid, like the Rabbeinu Yonah brings down, and you abstain, that's what the Rambam means. Memarek nafshel Hashem yismach. You're abstaining. You're not having it. Why? Because you're nistapic. You're not sure. This is what is a poil yotzei. This is what wouldn't we do to bring our families on a higher darga, bring our guests on a higher darga. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about many different standards, and I'm just going to give you just one other angle. Even in our own kitchens, how much of our recent equipment, which this should be a shir b'fnei atzmai, how much of the equipment that has been now developed over the last 10 years creates such profound problems with bishul akum. Profound problems. Familiarity, your own standards, your ambition of what you want to accomplish. Those were the three yesodis. We should be zeicha taka in that schus, zicha. The more that we're zohir, the more that we're bonim, the more that we're in am the segula, the more that we're in am kodesh, and habola time asainos. If there's any questions, Royce will take a yes.
Why is the fish less problem than meat? Fish can just as much have issues than meat. They don't have the
It could have issues. But the question was that why is fish less of an issue than meat? The truth of the matter is,
you don't know who the hashgacha, I'm eating fish.
okay, why is it less than a problem? Because fish doesn't involve shchita. Fish doesn't involve melicha. Fish doesn't involve many of the halachis that are brought down in the very kimat, in the first more than 20 simonim in the beginning of Yeridea. Fish just doesn't involve it. If you go to the fish, they're before we start Hilchos Shchita, there are halachas of fish, simoni fish, but they aren't. They're very limited. It doesn't mean that it's problem free, but it's much less complicated because you don't have to know the sheichet, You don't have to know the boidik sakinim. You don't. There's so many different parts that are absent from the kashrus of fish, and therefore the opting on having fish doesn't necessarily avoid all the problems, but it avoids a very great portion of the problems. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll dive. Yes. Oh, that's the best way to clean vegetables. I could humbly give you ideas to which to go to the websites that are recommended to look at. And you could see the question was, what's the best way to check vegetables? I do want to tell you there are websites out there that give you a very good base to understand, to familiarize you with the problems, with the type of insects. Somebody came to me and asked me that they don't understand. Because I told them that recently I bought something in Walmart and it was infested with insects. Somebody tells me, you know what, Rabbi? I'm telling you, I've been checking romaine lettuce for years and years and never found a problem. So I first of all said that, maybe you don't know what the insects look like. And if that's the case, you could be living in a world of bliss. You don't even see them because they're very small. They're very, very small. And this is, again, if you learn how to check vegetables, then what happens is that I was just in my house on Monday, and there was a young girl in the house, and I was checking lettuce, and I saw 2 aphids, and I brought her over, and I said, take a look at that, and then I took the second piece of lettuce, I said, find it. She found it. Familiarity. Standards. So you could find it on the OU website, on the CRC website, on the many different websites, all have different instructions on how to check vegetables. Zemakoy. There are local hashkachas also that have instructions. We have an instruction. We have a very good website, a very comprehensive website in the Vada Kashrus of 5 towns. But there are ways to familiarize. Yes, the beginning is go on the website. Go on the OU website, go on the Star K website, go on the CRC website. They're very expansive. They give you a big site. Somebody asks me, what could I do about Slurpees? What could I do about Starbucks? What could I do about all these things l'maisa, right? Coffee. All these things are halacha l'maisa. What do I do about all these things? I said, you want to know? Familiarity. Understand what you talk. Understand what the shilas are in drinking a coffee in Starbucks. Understand the shilas that exist when you go into a 7-Eleven to want to buy slush. How do you familiarize yourself? Go on to these very erlicha websites, the CRC, the Star K, the OU. They have articles on it. They tell you what the issues are. They tell you what their suggestion is on how to get around the problems, if this could get around the problems. This is the point I'm saying. There's so much out there, and there's so much information being furnished to Klal Yisrael. You just have to tap into it. You have to familiarize yourself. You have to set yourself up and say, okay, now I'm going to set standards. Am I going to allow my family to do this or not to do this? Am I going to allow them to drink coffee or not to drink coffee? How do you know what to do? By having the ambition of taking the time, researching it, going on the website, and after all of that, still don't understand it, get yourself a Rebbe, get yourself somebody that can answer you, a professional that can answer those questions. It's all a matter of being the Chacham Reis HaNoiled, of making the effort, of investing in. And remember, Adam Mekadesh Atzmai Milmata, just Ma'at, Mekadshin Oisoi Harbe Milmala. A person is Zoichet to Gewaldige Siyata Deshmaya, Chutz Me'al Me'ever Me'gidrei HaTeva. Hashem should just see our erlich intentions and be matzalas and always infuse us with that Kedusha, with that Am Segula, Ki B'cha B'cha Yisrael. Thank you very much for listening. Good night. I forgot about it.
Want now?
No, I'll make you drink it. It's hard to know you'll hear him off. I'm shocked.
Sure. Shem Irgen Shir Torah Masters Boston like to give a big Ashikar to Rabbi Eisen for the formative drasha and shir. We'd like to give a big Ashikar to Moshe Klein from the board members of Irgen Shir Torah for sponsoring tonight's shir. Lila Nishmas Imoy, Risha Edel, Basar Bavrom Over, Shalom to Nishmos of Tzur, B'tzar Chaim, Yotzet Aleph for Shirish Elul. We're also to have the great schus of sponsoring one of the remaining shirim next week in the last week of the summer program. We'll have a chelik in our botzas Torah of Irgen Shir Torah's worldwide shirim throughout the year. Light of our recent dinner on Monday. If you weren't able to join in Mishtatav, you can still take part and have a chelik. This great mitzvah by calling 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com or come up to the front table after the shir after Ma'ariv. Chananya ben Akash Shemar Tzcheres Baruch Hu L'Zakes Es Yisrael Figure Hibbel and Torah Mitzvah Shenemar and Echofes and Mansut Geyagdol Torah V'Yadeh.